violence or murder. You lack violence.
Can I just say, it was quite rude of fans to make fun of your name like that.
Who the fuck are you?
Hi, my name's Exalclaw. If you're new here, hi. If you're not new here, welcome back. Today I'm here to talk about a game that I really don't want people overlooking in 2024, Gori Cuddly Carnage. A game that completely caught me by surprise, mostly because I only started playing it due to its demo that I found on a YouTube trailer a while back that now translated into playing one of my favorite games this year. And don't get me wrong, while the orange cat is a huge sell and is far from the only reason that you should pick up this game. Developed by Angry Demon Studio and published by Wired Productions, Gori Cuddly Carnage is an action horror game set in a cyberpunk dystopia where humanity has been completely wiped out by a toy revolution of all things, the origins of which is revealed throughout the game's story as you, Gori, find the professor, alongside the incessantly chatty and incredibly deadly hoverboard f.r.a.n.k and downer but mostly useful AI companion c.h.i.p. Now when talking about this game and as to why people should pick it up, I think the key reason is the movement system on this thing. Like moment to moment gameplay, everything was extremely reactive, the controls feel tight, and never once did I feel like my flow state was being broken by the game's natural mechanics. Everything seemed to be built in purpose of the movement system of this game and it pulls it off swimmingly. And it's all based around this hoverboard that you see our lovely cat here napping on, or killing people on, whatever clip I chose to put on front of here. Whether it's you grinding on rainbow rails, or billboards, or enemies' faces, this hoverboard is essential throughout the entire game. It is the cinch pin that makes this a worthwhile experience in my opinion. The game makes sure that it's not just a added bonus, but a core mechanic that you are constantly using, since the only way that you can refuel in this game, and fuels the way in which you use special moves, is by constantly riding around the stage like you don't have a care in the world. Grinding on these rainbow rails and these billboards automatically fills your fuel gauge, and having fuel in your hoverboard is how you do the special moves in this game, i.e. what I affectionately call the pinwheel attack, or what I even more affectionately refer to as the Deadly Beyblade. Not to mention this hoverboard doesn't just relegate you to close combat, but actually lets you do long range combat too, as level 2 of Gori Cuddly Carnage quickly reveals that you also have access to a freaking rocket launcher, one that becomes very handy throughout the game as you get exposed to enemies that are either flying in the air, or that you simply can't touch without hurting yourself. And the wonderful thing about this rocket launcher mechanic is to actually break the flow state of everything at all. It slows down time so that you can properly aim, blast off an enemy head, feel like the equalizer for 3 seconds, and then go about slicing and dicing everything else again. Everything in this game feels in service of making sure your movement doesn't ever have to be truly stalled, and the only time it does become stalled is if you're not paying attention to your fuel gauge. It's a nice way to keep the tension high, but make sure you're still having fun at the same time without sacrificing a lot of movement. And the really wonderful thing is that since this movement is so deeply interwoven into everything, as you do more upgrades which feel pretty accessible with the way that you collect coins in this game, you never start to feel bogged down or having trouble moving around freely, even as the enemies become more complicated and diverse and ultimately try to constrain you in what you do. Just having this tightness in an action game makes it go from being a basic hack and slash with just mindless enemies attacking you to something that feels like, oh snap, I am actively surviving these stages and looking dapper as hell in my outfit while I'm doing it. It's a lot of fun. Not to mention that because this game knows its movement system rocks, it not only has action sequences on multi-floor levels, but has these really interesting chase sequences too, where in the middle of a level they'll be like, hey, by the way, you're about to get chased by something huge and deadly for a while, start zooming like your life depends on it. And it almost feels like you just jumped into a random Sonic level, except of being an annoying blue hedgehog, you are a somewhat annoying orange cat. Neither of them are annoying, I just think that's the first word that came to mind because chase sequences are very hit or miss for me. I love the idea of them, but dude, you hit one wall or hit one enemy that breaks the momentum and your anxiety goes from 50 to 175 in an instant. With that being said though, none of these chase sequences ever felt hard. There's only one instance where the timer, there's actually a lot of timers in this game as I'm realizing. There's only one or two instances that I remember the chase sequences specifically being a bit more difficult, and that's when there were some enemies I had to defeat along the way. Ultimately, it's not meant to make the experience more tense than it already is. It's just another way for you to have fun zooming around on your hoverboard, and rather than just jumping from wall to wall, actually going along like a racetrack almost. The best comparison that I can make to how I felt actually playing this thing is that for some reason I kept thinking why do I feel like I'm playing a modernized PS2 game? You already got the tight action controls that let you kind of shoot a little bit, but also make sure you have a nice close range attack. You have these crafted levels. You got a little hub space that just gives you access to each level on a pretty easy way without having to go through like a big loading screen into your bigger open world map. It's like pretty curated. Not to mention that you are a anthropomorphic creature with an annoying little robot that just chats. It's giving Jack and Dexter. It's giving Ratchet and Clank. It's just giving PlayStation mascots from back in the day, which is especially relevant given that Astrobot just dropped. Now that I talked about the movements and just the general how the action is from beat to beat, I need to talk about the environments because I really like the way they did the environments in this game. First and foremost, I really like the fact that this game made sure that there's a lot of enemy diversity and that the enemies that show up actually match the environments that they appear in. Possibly with the exception of the first level, since it's just kind of regular cyberpunk city setting, but I feel like that's a bit more acceptable because like you're just starting the game. Of course, you're going to start with a city where you can basically run into anything, hence the undead unicorns. Show up at a New York City metro station at like 2 a.m. and you probably would run into the same thing. But regardless of that, in the levels where the enemies did feel like they matched the aesthetic a lot more, such as the toxic, annoying little that appeared in the toxic waste level, or the enemies that appeared on the underwater level, things felt like they were actually using the environment that they were made in rather than just being like another enemy that has basically the same abilities but with a different skin in the level. It made things feel more distinct as time went on. I also like the fact that the bosses of each level, especially the big bosses of each level, fit them extremely well. The arcade boss that I'm pretty sure I used for the thumbnail of this video because I got a bitchin' photo of it in photo mode. Like everything feels like it was crafted and actually meant to conjure a different feeling from you in each level. Like, oh, this was actually my favorite. No, this one was my favorite. The first level does a great job of like giving you baseline to expect of how to move around, but that second level really is like, oh, okay, no, this game's gonna actually have me playing differently from level to level. Like that one is where I like kind of locked in. And it feels fresh in what's actually a relatively short play time. I think it only took me 7 hours to finish, and I didn't even get all the keys in each level to do like the little side missions and stuff. The side missions being just like basically arena modes. Now, my personal favorite levels were the doll world because Spooky Castle, come on. We're about to head into October. I love Halloween. Give me a little spook, give me a little scare. I'm gonna have a good time. Plus, I just really like the boss they introduced there with the dollhouse. That boss is like actually terrifying. I don't know what it was about just having to pay. I don't know if it was just the fact that like it just revealed itself and gave itself more limited time for attacking some of the other ones, or just like this nice idea of having these flower eyes pop up from the floor and ask you to actually like investigate the stage around you as you're dodging all hell breaking loose behind you. It just added a nice sense of tension late into the game that I wasn't expecting. And to my actual surprise, because I usually hate these levels, the water level was a lot of fun. And it's not just because you, light spoiler, you end up picking up an additional character in the crew in the water level. I'm not going to spoil too much about that, but it's like, you know, another fun little addition to your cast of characters. Just how they did it too, and like making it not super tension. Like they still have the usual water meter bar, so there's always that worry of drowning, but like it never felt to the point where I thought I wasn't giving a fair shot at surviving the level. And the way that they introduced certain enemies for the water level made it feel like it was actually like a fun sidebar. And I think the one thing that I did like that was consistent from level to level was just how big everything was and compared to Gori and f.r.a.n.k. Like there's a great sense of scale in this game that really sells the underdog or under cat feeling. There's a way to approach this game as you're a cat trying to save the last remnant of an entire species. The human species in this case, which is crazy as hell when you put it like that, but hey, crazy game deserves crazy story. And speaking of the story here, while it's nothing to write home about, it is pretty wholesome because the professor and Gori are like this. They have this really nice comic book style retelling of their history together and showing how the professor learned to, not even learned to, but like had a natural love for Gori, how it was more than just like, oh, I feel responsible for this thing I created. Like they have this nice little movie night scene where it's like, oh no, they actually like all talked to each other, they chatted, they had a bit of rapport. Like this is not just like, oh, feeling like obligation. This is them wanting to go back and find the loved one. Gori going after the professor, I mean. So it's really nice in that way. Funnily enough, Gori is the only character in this game that can't talk, but still one of the most expressive ones. Like they really make sure to go out the way of animating his face, of showing his reactions, of not being a lot of room to guess of what he's thinking as he's begrudgingly listening to f.r.a.n.k. or trying to support c.h.i.p. You know, you never forget the insanity that he is doing of being a cat going around murdering everything in sight. And funnily enough, there actually is like one of the levels that plays around with the idea of Gori's own mentality in a way that's pretty surprising, and I think it's better experienced rather than told here. But in general, you never get left with the feeling that this cat is a blank slate. Like, this is a whole character still, which is cute. And that goes for the whole crew, honestly. I think in isolation, maybe each of them would start getting a little bit annoying, or maybe just not resonate as much on their own. But as a trio, they all play off each other really nice, filling each other's flaws and highlighting their own strengths. This trio dynamic that they have going on here works really well. And even though the professor doesn't have a lot of screen time, they're constantly in the comic book flashbacks, and through those, they end up leaving a pretty lasting impression. Plus, through these voice recordings that are optional to listen through before the beginning of each level, where they basically are sharing how they can defeat this toy revolution while also still be on the run herself. I wouldn't say she's like a fully fleshed character or anything. Like, I couldn't tell you what her favorite thing to do is when she's not running for her life. But in what she does appear in, she shows up with a lot of conviction. There's no question that she's smart. And in general, she comes off as the kind of character that you would be willing to do all of this shit for in the first place. So kudos for that. And outside of that, I mean, there's just a lot of other small things that I like about this game. And I think it's, again, things that actually harken back to an earlier era of gaming. Like, I like the fact that the hub here is so simple. It lets you play around with the movement stuff again. Like, you have the rails here to jump around and just, like, test out your abilities if you want to, so you can get comfortable if you've put down the game for a minute and just need to remind yourself how things work. But overall, the hub is pretty straightforward. When you collect the keys that are like hidden throughout the levels, not hidden like super hard. Like, some, as the game progresses, some of them are more difficult to find. But if you want to go out your way to find them, it's definitely not going to take you too long. Keys reveal different parts of the ship that correlate to the level that you finished and give you like a hoodie. I guess I'm just also realizing that I like a small hub. I guess the TLDR there is, like, I like a hub that's simple because hubs are where I want to calm down and cool out. And then sometimes with other games, like I finished Final Fantasy 16 earlier this year. While I really liked that game and really liked the hub of that game too, sometimes it could have felt overwhelming, just because there's so much to see in that hub and so many people to talk to, that it's just like, I feel like I'm going to spend 30, 45 minutes just hanging out here before I have to get to like the stuff that actually progresses the story. Which, again, games should have that. I'm not against it, but it's like having something that's as simple as the hub that was here, where it's just like, oh, these guys had fun designing it. It looks good. I can test out the controls. Like, I actually feel relaxed here before I have to jump into some 45 minutes of killing a bunch of unicorns. It's nice. And now that I spent all that time, you know, talking about all its pros, just a few things that I wish were different. Since a lot of the level progression in this game is dependent on you making sure you clear stages and defeat every single boss, and some of these stages are multi-level stages, there was like one or two instances where I thought I had finished a level, so I'm like kind of just zooming around like for 5 to 6 minutes until I realized it was just a small boss on a bottom part of the stage I didn't realize I could reach. So not like against the game, just more like, hey, if you're down to one boss, it's nice to have like maybe like an arrow pointing to it, be like, hey, here is where the boss is after like a certain amount of time has passed, or just something that's outlining them so you're not feeling like an idiot for 10 minutes trying to search where the hell this last boss is. And on that note, actually, I think in the toxic world, I'm pretty sure it's a toxic world, I ran into one or two instances where I'm actually pretty sure I did complete the level, but the game didn't recognize me completing the level, so I had to restart it. Not the whole level, just like the last checkpoint, and it only took me like 5 to 7 minutes to like do that part of the level again to continue. So it wasn't like a huge damper, but like no one likes having to redo something that they think they completed. So that's just like, that might have just been my experience or just something that happened, but small thing compared to that never happening ever again after. And the last thing was the keys. The keys are cool, and you need to get them if you want to do like 100% the game, not just because like, you know, for completion, for collecting collectibles, but the little side missions where the arena battles take place, you need the keys to get access to those things. And it seemed to me like the only way to do that was by completely restarting a level over again. And it's just one of those moments where I was like, I kind of wish that after you finish a level, you could easily just jump back to a checkpoint and see if you can find one of the key components there. Because to have to replay a whole level to get like 1 or 2 pieces of keys in each level, taking on average like 45 minutes to an hour for me. You could probably do a little bit faster, but like I think on average 45 minutes is a good estimate. I don't have to dedicate 45 minutes just to get another collectible. The game is fun, and like it's not bad to go back into doing it for that purpose. It's just like, if you know you're just more focused on trying to get the collection done and like 100% it, it's a more convenient way to go about it, to just have like a checkpoint you can go back to easily. But yeah, overall, I honestly couldn't recommend this game enough. Like the moment that when I'm like was in my notes app taking notes about the game and I saw myself write, feels like a remaster of a PS2 game that doesn't exist, I knew I liked this game. It's short, it's smooth. I think it cost me like $20, so like 7 hours of a really tight action game to get complete in 7 hours. You can do that in one day or just over a weekend. I don't think people should overlook it, and I think if you just want to have like a really nice action, you know, crafted level game where it's very clear how you can progress through things and you're just looking for a really nice experience, you could not go wrong with Gori Cuddly Carnage. So with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you check it out yourself, please come back and tell me how you liked it. If you already checked it out, let me know in the comments and tell me if you agree with what I said. Tell me if you disagree with some of it. Ultimately, I hope this also becomes your next favorite Orange Cat game. Again, no disrespect to Stray, but I think this one crowns it for me. Take care of yourself. Take care of your loved ones. I'll see y'all in the next video. Ciao.